Welcome to the Center Clueless podcast. The podcast that takes day-by-day approach to politics. Drinking my coffee, I am Billy Ray Brewton.
I am Erik Surwill.
Hi, everybody.
Well, hey.
Hey.
Yeah.
Wait, is there? Do I hear something machine in the background? Is there something electronic that is thumping that should not be thumping?
Thumping?
Well, not thumping, but running consistently.
Oh, you mean my air conditioner?
That was for folks who can't see, that was my subtle reminder to Erik to sweat.
There we go. Take a second. So, dude, I woke up this morning looking at
that's
Twitter.
already an accomplishment, right? Anytime that happens, we're starting off with a good day.
I know. When you're 50, it's the win. So the first thing I see this morning when I wake up is, and I'm kind of sensitive to this because I'm pro-Ukraine, is Vivek Ramaswamy, who I will now call Vivek Ramaflimflam. Ukrainism is a new religion. Kiev is the Vatican, Zelensky is the Pope, and career politicians in both parties are the new faithful. It's sad to say they'll make a pilgrimage halfway around the world, hitting Christie, right? While ignoring the invasion across our own southern border right here at home. All right, listeners, quick, run to Google and Google Vivek Ramaswamy visits the border, and you'll find nothing! Because he doesn't go to the border either, idiot. Anyways, I can't stand that guy now. It's sad because he was so promising in the beginning. And he's just such a complete lever.
Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I would absolutely 100% hate fuck him. Like 100%, no question. I would absolutely hate fuck him.
Yeah.
And if I'm playing a game of kill, fuck, marry, he's probably not getting killed.
Right.
But every other way, fuck that dude, right? Like, I mean, I've listened to a couple of interviews of his lately. I watched his firing line interview, and I'm just like, dude, you're just an idiot. Like, obviously, you're not an idiot. Obviously, you're an intelligent guy, but like, you're also still an idiot. Like,
no, he's a flim-flam man. He's just out there promoting his book.
He's a grifter, just like Trump is a grifter. Like, I mean, say what you want about some of these other presidential candidates, but they're not grifters.
Yeah, they're not grifting. Yeah, this isn't some bullshit.
This dude has zero executive experience in any way, shape, or form outside of being a fucking CEO. Like, has no political background whatsoever and is rolling up in there like dude's got all the answers. Like, I'm sorry, you're young, you're a good-looking guy, you're diverse, you're all these things. Why does your message have to be so stank-ass rotten?
Right. I mean, and they're he was so close to something that was actually new and actually fresh. And what stinks for me now is I realize that was calculated on his part just to sound good, so that he could again be, in the sphere of personalities. And I just, okay, fine, you're an idiot, and I'm moving on. And oddly though, Christie becomes even more viable as a legitimate outside voice in the Republican Party.
But keeping, like, I feel like whoever, and I'm not sure exactly at this point who is running Chris Christie's campaign, but what I can say is I think they're really apt. I think they know what they're doing. Like, I have seen no other presidential candidate, that includes Trump, that includes DeSantis, get as much media exposure as Chris Christie has gotten.
Right.
And I just watched him. He just was on the Pod Save America, Crooked Media's Pod Save America, which is a notoriously it's a far left progressive leaning. Yeah. He was just on the show, got interviewed, and it was a hard hitting interview. Like,
I gotta see that. I haven't seen that.
Like, they went hard at him, and he handled it so well and turned it around on him a couple times, and like just seemed like he was game to be there. And I was like, I feel like this kind of stuff is going to start making a difference. Like, I feel like it is. And then the fact that he just went over to Ukraine, and like he's almost acting like a former president, having never been a former president. He's acting like the front runner.
Right. So Chris Christie, Tim Scott versus Biden, Kamala Harris, what happens?
I don't know.
That's a rough one. That's a pretty rough one.
Yeah, the answer is I don't know. I think I think honestly for me that's the toughest potential Republican lineup for Biden and Harris.
Right. That I mean, if Christie could make it through the trial by fire, then it would be, by the way, to get through the Republican nomination process. I mean, we're looking at Trump now, down right on he's on
Yeah.
his third, yet another on his way to a likely fourth indictment. And I mean, I honestly could see him being supported running from even prison or running the country from prison, but we'll see. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Well, to switch gears entirely and go to something non-political for a couple minutes, I just have to say, Erik, I'm getting into board games again.
What kind of board games?
Like complicated board games. So like it started off with Dune, right? Me and my friends got really into Dune, and then
Dune the board game?
Dune the board game. And
Go
then
ahead.
and then my buddy Ben has really been diving into board games. And so now it's games like Root, which I have not played yet, and then Energy Empire, which I did play, which is a shit ton of fun. And now there are all these other games like Terraforming Mars and Nightmare Cathedral, and it's like I'm learning a lot about board games now, and I feel like a backwards Peter Pan. I don't know how to say it. It's like I'm getting back.
Don't feel bad about it.
I felt like I had given up board games. But now, the board games I kind of relate to, though, are more like board games mixed with Magic the Gathering, which I was a big Magic fan.
That's
for
a complex,
years.
And that's a complex game. Let's be honest.
Oh, yeah, no, Magic is a very complex game, but I'm learning a lot about board games, like weight. I didn't know what weight meant. Weight actually means how difficult it is. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's funny. When you were a kid, did you play difficult board games when you were a kid?
I mean, I don't know if you would look back and say it's difficult, but I was playing Risk from like 7 years old, and that was my go-to game was Risk. Then when I got about 11 or 12 is when I really got into Magic, and that's when I started really investing in my decks and like really building those out. And I was never a D&D guy. I was never a D&D guy.
It's funny. There's a part of that's why I never got into Magic, because I felt it was also like a collector's swing, and I think it
is. Well, it is and isn't. Like it is like I just read the other day, there's this one card, I don't know if you read about this, there's this one Magic the Gathering card. It's One Ring to Rule Them All. It's the Lord of the Rings card that just sold for $2 million.
Right. Yeah, there are cards.
And I've invested thousands in my Magic deck, thousands of dollars in my Magic decks.
And as the father of a daughter who's doing Pokemon, it too has its stuff.
Oh, that's similar. It's similar. Yeah. And like with Magic, what I love, I mean, we always played hardcore rules too, meaning that like you would have to, if you lost, you would have to let them pick one of your cards. So like,
oh no,
oh yeah, we play Cutthroat. So like, if you lose a game, you're giving up one of your cards, and like,
do you realize what it did? As a father, I'm like, I'm absolutely limiting where my daughter, I mean, she's younger, obviously, than you were when you were playing. How old were you when you were playing Magic? 15, 12?
No, about 15? 11, 12 is when I started.
Really?
I wouldn't say that I was very good until I was like 13 or 14.
This is where I'm an overprotective father. I'm like, you are absolutely not giving away any of your Pokemon cards. I'm like doing that with my daughter, which I know is ridiculous to do.
Yeah.
But whatever. When I was a kid, I played war games more so, right? And so the complex war game for when I was younger was a game called Third Reich, and it was a World War II, and it had hundreds of pieces. And I had a friend of mine named Ken, who I don't think he minds if I mention him. He would sit and play Germany and fight off three of us, this motherfucker, and often win. And it was the most annoying thing in the world. He was so good at wargaming. And to this day, even, he's still great at wargaming. And so that's where I did the complex stuff. What was good about those games, you just bought the game and you never had to buy any more pieces. That was sort of the...
Well, you know what? You know what's interesting? Third Reich, the weight on Third Reich is 4.33 out of 5. So it is considered a high-level difficulty game.
It is very difficult. Yeah. That's a very difficult game.
Yeah, so that's but yeah, that was just a quick note to say you might hear me name dropping board games from now on, and that's because I've become a geek again. So welcome to it.
LOL. Okay.
But it ties in because when I was younger and I gave up board games because I played them too much, I thought I had canceled them. But you know what?
Jesus Christ.
I really hadn't. And that takes us to yet another installment of Cancel Corner.
Right.
That's right. This is the segment where we talk about folks on the right, left, either or, neither, whatever we want to talk about. Essentially, it just is mother bullshit with graphics. And this time we actually have two. We have two cancel ease. The
Right.
first one Erik is going to ease us into. It is a gentleman who is one of the smarmiest looking motherfuckers I've ever seen. Tell us about Richard Hernia.
It's Richard Hanania, motherfucker. Richard Hanania. We got Vivek Rama Flim Flam and Richard
We're not as
Hernia.
good as nicknames as Trump is.
Right. So Richard Hanania, who was, I actually had read some of his stuff, canceling myself, or maybe self-canceling. He was for me at least, a center-right guy, loved by the techies, sort of one of the new rising stars on the center right. And it's come out that about 10 12 years ago he was writing under the pen name Richard Host, where he identified himself as a race realist, supported eugenics and the forced sterilization of low IQ people who he argued were most often black. He would argue against what he called miscegenation, which is sort of the racist term for race mixing, and also arguing that blacks cannot govern themselves. He's cited the Turner Diaries. He is, at least writing under that pen name, that typical edgelord douchebag from, the right. And this guy's getting canceled quickly. Even anybody who's ever written with him, like Matty Iglesias, who's a center left guy, again, in that realm of not being a Democrat, not being a Republican, but commenting on politics. And even Matty Iglesias is getting heat for having, liked or argued with or discussed things with this guy. So it's a classic cancellation, which looks to be somewhat appropriate, although it may backfire on many of the left wingers who are pushing it, because what this seems to be doing on some side, like in some cases, people are like, well, maybe these ideas aren't so bad, right? And that's sort of the interesting thing that's happening with cancel culture. Anybody that gets canceled now, instead of them getting canceled, their ideas get vetted, and I'm not happy with how some of that's happening in this case.
Yeah. I don't know much about this dude, and but I mean, just in the tertiary amount of stuff I've just scrolled over in the last few minutes. Yeah, this dude. I mean, there's really no backtracking your way out of that, right?
No.
There's no way. There's no reasoning or excuse that you can put up to doing that kind of work under a pseudonym. So clearly, you knew what you were doing. Had some problems to it. Yeah. So there's no backtracking out of that. There's no way that all you can do is own it and say, yeah, I'm a racist. Right. But I don't know what else you do.
If you're going to talk to me about the issues with test scores between the various scare quotes races, I'm willing to hear it, because I don't care anyways, even if it was completely true. I look at people as individuals. I don't believe in the statistical norm being how I judge or deal with any group of people. Really, it doesn't matter to me. Sure, fine, even if it was true, okay, anyways. But the fact is, he used it as a therefore, right? These people are dumb, therefore they can't govern themselves. These people, like that type of conversation, like, and then if you're against race mixing, that's where I really look. As a child, that was my big one. As a kid, I never got it. Like, why can't you marry someone who's black? Or why can't you marry someone who's Mexican? Or why can't you marry someone who's Japanese? To me, that was crazy. Like, why wouldn't you? And, in a world of racism, where racism was much more of a thing when I was a kid, it just was. It was, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Why wouldn't you look at one of the possible ways the heirs let out of this, out of the race anger, is by people of different cultures and races marrying to each other? And to be fair, I married, into a Persian family. I married into a Chaldoni family, and it's been nothing but awesome. And there's stuff that goes on that are things that are culturally different. And sometimes I get heat for being a white guy, even, right?
Yeah.
But you just face it. And I would look at them like,
Yeah.
hey, how are my actions? How have my actions been in reality? And I actually think that there are universal goods that people can see about each other. This guy making up that there should be some form of division between whites and blacks, to me, that's where he self-cancels, right? You're an idiot to make
Yeah.
any argument like that.
Yeah, that's it's ludicrous. I mean, when I was younger, like very different outcome, because when you grow up in the South, whether it's intentionally drilled or not, like you do grow up with the understanding that you're probably supposed to date and marry within your own race.
Right.
And a lot of that is just because, like, when I grew up in the South, there weren't any diverse faces around me. It was all
Right.
white people. And so it took me years to get to a point, like, for the longest time, like, the only people I found attractive were white people.
Really?
And
It's funny. For me,
yeah.
I always found.
No.
Really? Okay, keep
Yeah,
going. Sorry, I
no, no,
interrupted you.
no. And I had to unlearn a lot of stuff. And so, like, I remember very vividly the first time when I started, like, really finding black folks attractive. And then I remember when I started finding Asian people attractive. And
Right.
when I started, and then there was a moment a couple years ago when I was like, oh, like, I had never really been attracted sexually to trans people. And there were like a year or so ago, where I was like, oh, I'm attracted to this person. Like, it's just, I've had to unlearn, I think, a lot of, like, bad information that was drilled. And I don't want to say, like, I've been learning, like, the whole time. Like, I was probably in my late 20s when I was finally like, oh, everybody's hot.
Right. But when you say unlearn, do you think that racial exclusivity towards whites was taught to you, or is it just because you were around a bunch of white people?
I think both. And I don't think it was taught to me. Like, it wasn't like people were
Like your
telling us that
parents never sat you down and said, "Never go with them blacks."
No,
Like
no,
that never happened to you.
well, they didn't, but I did have a relative, and I won't say which one, but I did have a relative
Yeah.
who was, I don't even know how to. You have to use the word racist in there to some
Sure.
degree to adequately describe it, but it's a different kind of racism. It's not like I hate all black people racism. It's like I was taught to dislike these people, and so now, I mean, it's more along the lines of that. I'm not excusing it. I'm just
Yeah.
saying I did deal with that a lot, and so I did grow up at least with some voices in my head going, oh, black people aren't as good. Black people are all criminals. Black people, blah blah blah, and so I think it's a little bit of all of it, because I wasn't like I had teachers or anybody directly saying, like, white people can't marry or get involved with black people. That
Right.
wasn't happening. But I do think subconsciously it was there in a lot of different ways. And then I do agree with you also. I think a lot of it too was that I was just also around nothing but white people. Like,
Yeah. See, for me, I think it was who I was around. Because as an example, growing up early in Burbank and then in North Hollywood, I wasn't really around a lot of black people, but I was absolutely around, Hispanics, mostly Mexicans. And it was funny because when I would become interested in a Mexican girl, the story in my family was their family's never going to accept you, like that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it was like this thing over there, and I'm like, well, I mean, grandma might scowl at me, but for the most part, it was like grandma scowling, mom and dad being guarded. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Maybe a brother being pissed off.
Well,
At
like,
worst.
see,
So
like,
I don't know.
that
I
makes
just never.
sense.
I just never really. I never really. My first girlfriend was white, and then to be fair, that was the only time I really went out with a white girl, air quotes, scare quotes, whatever you call it. And then from that point forward, another woman that I was in love with for years was, Hispanic. She was Honduran, and I don't know. I kind of like.
Yeah.
I never really got it. So this guy, whenever I hear that
Yeah.
as like a thing, I'm like, you're fucking stupid. And it's stupid because it really is rooted in. There's nothing scientific about it. There's nothing logical about it. Let's pretend that blacks were somehow not as smart or Hispanics were somehow not as smart. Isn't the right move as a society or as a human society to then just mix it up so that we can, kind of break up the genetic. Like, let's just pretend that that's true. Even in that space, it doesn't make any sense to not go out and mix societies and cultures
Well, of course
together.
it does, Eric, because then we wouldn't be able to build the perfect race.
Okay, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, then we wouldn't be able to keep chugging along with what Hitler tried to do all those decades ago.
Fuck this bullshit.
I know.
Fuck anti-miscegenation. Fuck racists. And really, honestly, in this one, for this cancel corner, fuck Richard Hanania.
Well, moving on from fuck Richard Hernia.
Richard Hernia, yeah.
We're now moving on to, and this isn't really a left cancellation. It's kind of a universal, and I use the word cancellation lightly because I think there's still a lot of clarity that needs to be given on this situation. So essentially, Jamie Foxx went onto Instagram and he posted the following. It said, "They killed this dude named Jesus, ... What do you think they'll do to you? Hashtag fake friends, hashtag fake love." Now, on one side, you have a whole group of people who read that message as I read that message, and that were like, well, this is anti-Semitic, clearly, because people have used the Jews killed Jesus trope
they call it Jesus killer. You're a Jesus killer.
Yeah, and so I mean, so it trucks in a lot of anti-Semitism over the years. Now, Jamie Foxx, of course, came out, apologized for posting it, and then the reframing is that when he said they, he was referring to fake friends, because according to him, he had just had a blow up with a fake friend who had betrayed him. And so the question, this is one of those things that actually does require more information, because all it comes down to, all any of this come down to is, was your friend Jewish? If the friend,
right.
because if the friend that you just removed from your life for betraying you was Jewish, you're not going to convince me that this was not an anti-Semitic remark.
So the way it's been defended is that he was talking about friends, a friend, right? That's how. So you're actually you're inferring his defense, which has been this was a friend, and it's also been coded in this is the vernacular of the Black community. So
yeah,
that doesn't. I mean, what do you think of that? Is that accurate? Do you think?
I don't know of any instances of a bunch of Black people out there saying the Jews killed Jesus. I mean, I know some do. I'm not saying if you're using Kanye as your metric for Black people, I think that's the problem.
Right. I'm saying that the term, didn't they use the term snake or something like that? Am I crazy? Why am I not knowing about this?
Well, while you're looking at that, I'll just say this. I guess my problem with this is, a few years ago, someone made a social media post. That person's name was Roseanne.
Yes.
And people decided that it meant something that it did not, or that I don't think it did, and a lot of other people at this point don't, and Roseanne has been adamant did not. Yet she was canceled and her entire fucking career and life taken from her in a big way. I don't see any difference between that and this, frankly. Like, okay, I'm not saying dude is anti-Semitic necessarily, but like, you're going to make a post like that, you got to be smart enough to know what your words mean. And if we're going to fucking cancel Roseanne over something that was misinterpreted, then like, come on. Like, I'm not saying we should cancel Jamie Foxx, but I'm like, dude needs to have a better excuse than like, well, that's not what I meant.
Well, so here it is. Any Black person growing up in the South will tell you that Jamie Foxx wasn't referring to Jewish people. They killed, lied, talked about Jesus simply means if Jesus can be betrayed, so can you. He generally meant fake friends, fake people. So quick to reach.
Yeah, so quick to read. No, look, and I'm not saying that's not accurate. I'm not saying that that's not entirely what he meant. But if you're going to be posting that shit on Instagram, you need to understand what your words mean. Like, you don't know that if you post "they killed Jesus," that like people might infer that you're talking about the Jewish community, especially during a time when anti-Semitic hate is so high.
Yeah,
and like
it's hot right now.
And then like it was so funny because for some reason Jennifer Aniston, people started saying that she had liked it even though she hadn't. So she had to come up and like defend herself and be like, "I never liked this post. Right. I'm not anti-Semitic."
Right.
And it's like, so that's it. It's like, I'm not saying dude is anti-Semitic. I'm not saying dude deserves to be canceled, but like, we have a really fucking hypocritical approach to this shit because there have been people who have been canceled for far less. And I have
and there is, and also it's not unfair to state specifically as an example through, so the Black Muslim movement, that there hasn't been an anti-Semitic line rolling through the Black community. There has been. That's something that's an issue. Not obviously not all Blacks, or even not even a majority of Blacks, not even a sizable minority, less than 10%, but people in the media. And you've seen it, right? There is the again, the Nation of Islam hasn't been quiet about it, and that's really the space where people associate that with anti-Semitism. That's also something where you have to be fairly tone deaf to not get that there's been a little heat between blacks and Jews, as well as blacks and Asians now, right? There's that conversation going on. And it's interesting to see when the identitarian, right? Meaning I'm Jewish, I'm black, I'm Asian, I'm white, all of that, it gets messy because there's a lot of gnarliness that exists between all categories in that identitarian space. And so obviously whites having enslaved blacks as by the way, I'm not just going to sit and say whites, but it was, you know what I'm saying, right? In America, mostly white Europeans enslaving blacks. That's the biggest mess. Outside of that mess, there is stuff going on today that still is painful for people, and people have got to start understanding that you don't just get a free ride because it's not the hate du jour, right? It's kind of weird now that, I mean, Jamie Foxx probably should have known what he's doing. He's not a stupid person, right? Jamie Foxx is, in fact, I would assert, a genius, as well as someone who is highly talented and should understand. And when I say talented, what that matters here is that he understands that how what you say gets out into reality. Yeah. He himself is a performer. He's said things that he knows are going to have a certain impact on people that listen. So he's not outside of his genius. Sits firmly in the space where he should have understood how it was going to land with people. So maybe
who else that totally applies to? Who? Roseanne. Everything you just said also applies to Roseanne.
True.
We just didn't allow her any grace.
Well, I'm not canceling her. I don't cancel
No,
Roseanne.
No, I know. And I don't mean to make this like a whole, like, it's Roseanne versus Jamie Foxx. Like, no, it's not. But it's like, I don't know. That just really bugs me because, like, it always has. I'm like, because people don't want to take context into consideration. Right?
No, people want it to be simple. People don't want it to be.
It rarely is.
Yeah, nuance. What's the line? What's the Jesse Single line? Pervert for nuance. Yeah, I mean it is. Nuance is important here.
Well, that's it for Cancel Corner, everybody. We'll be back next week with another thrilling installment. Who will fuck up their lives next week? Stay tuned and find out. But now, this is actually exciting to talk about because growing up in the South, you hear people all the time make comments like, you know what, the South's going to rise again, or we should secede, and we need our own country. Like you hear that all the time. Yeah. So let's talk about this idea of a national divorce.
Oh man, dude.
Which has been kind of rattled around for a few years now. You've heard Marjorie Taylor Greene.
But it's been this year. Yeah, it's been this year since February where it's gotten crazy.
And you've been hearing some politicians on the right, espouse this idea of a national divorce as if it would be a good thing. And look, it would probably be a good thing from the South, considering that northern states typically prop up southern states in almost every conceivable area.
Except for Texas. Not Texas, yeah.
Well, Texas isn't necessarily the South either,
right,
Eric. So,
right. No, I know.
I mean that, I mean Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas,
the classic Texas, like the classic South, yeah.
So I'm sure they'd love that. I don't think they would actually, because then they would see that all of that the northern states actually do support them to a large degree. There are a million reasons so why don't you just start with tearing into this?
Well, I mean, It's lighting up right now because of Trump's current problems, which we will go over next, I believe.
Yeah.
And I've gotten it from at least 3 conservative friends recently where they discuss, we would just be happier as 2 separate countries. And I'm like, and I looked into it. I really wanted to see how big of a thing this was. And it's not really that big of a thing, but it is, depending on who you look at. Most reputable polling companies put it between 20 and 25% of people would welcome that. That's actually pretty big. Let's just say 1 out of 5. That's still pretty big. And in the Republican Party, depending on who you look at, it can get as high as 35%, right? Like Rasmussen tries to claim it's 35% of all Americans, and they put it at 50% of Republicans. It's Rasmussen, right? Get out of here. I think it's ridiculous because it's almost like the QAnon fever dream.
Yeah.
In that's never going to happen. And for it to happen would require such a massive upheaval in a country where most people got it pretty good. Let's be honest. We've talked about this before, and I realize that I sound like a lot of other people that do the same game, right? It's in philosophy. It's Steve Pinker. I'll say it this way: it's as good right now as it's ever been. It's as good right now in society, especially in America, as it's ever been in the history or the recorded history of humankind. So the concept that there are people in the United States suffering enough to take up arms, to try to do this the revolution way, good luck, okay? It's not going to happen. The concept that it's going to be done politically when not a single state house has resolved to do it, not a single county government anywhere has resolved to do it. It's such a ridiculous thing, but you want to know what it does? Is it drives guys like me nuts. That's what this is for. The concept and discussion of a national divorce only has any juice on the right because it pisses guys like me on the left off. And it's like, because to me, it's one of the most unpatriotic things that you could recommend. Now, there are Republicans who will argue for a stronger federalist system, essentially more states' rights. Honestly, I'm kind of, why don't you take that? I would actually not mind a states' rights argument or greater states' rights. And to be, and really, ever since Roe versus Wade was overturned, you're starting to see the ugliness of an absolutist anti-abortionist stance being shot down even in Texas. Like even recently, a judge in Texas is like, look, it's affecting women's health. In Texas, they just overturned the ban on abortions for medical reasons. And I mean, that's all you ever wanted anyways, for the most part. No one's aborting a child in the 3rd trimester because they just, I don't want to be bothered. That's the story that's told. Like there's a selfish woman that's got a partially born baby that she's going to kill because she just decided she didn't want a baby.
And they just club it over the head.
Yeah, that's not how it is. And look, I have friends who have had this issue happen, and I've had some friends, at least one friend, who aborted a child for this reason. And I had another friend him and his wife at the time went ahead and had the child. And it was something happened in the drainage for brain fluid, I think it was for maybe it was synovial fluid. And the resultant fluid built up, crushed the baby's brain in the 9th month.
Yeah.
And my friend that had their child, the child now, right, is I'm not going to sit here and say she's unaffected. She's absolutely affected. But it's not, for a child that lost 2/3 of their brain, it's not what you would think, right?
Yeah.
That this child's been able to develop and live with joy, speak, talk, do things, mostly shows up as sensory motor issues, right?
Yeah.
But the parents that I know that aborted their child, I totally support their right to abort
Yeah.
that child in the 9th month because their brain was crushed by a fluid buildup, which is, by the way, these types of genetic issues are the vast, like either 2 or 3, second or third, 9th percentile, meaning 99.99, or it may even be as crazy as 99.999 of all births like this are because of brain damage in the last
Yeah.
couple months. So
Yeah.
it's always been ridiculous to say that you can't abort a child for that. Of course you should be able to. And it's always been ridiculous to say you can't abort a child for the health of the mother. Why this matters as part of the national divorce. What the fuck is your problem?
Yeah.
It's working out, right? Like the legal system. So again, Roe versus Wade being overturned, that's politics working.
Yeah.
Those on the right got what they wanted when Trump and McConnell worked together to put conservative justices in place that would overturn Roe. That's what it looks like for politics to work. Whether the people on the left don't like it or the people on the right who don't want to admit it, the ones that
Well,
want this national divorce, it's
the
ridiculous.
people, well, the issue with the people on the right in this regard is they're pissed off that Republican judges are ruling against them.
Yep.
Because shocker, just because you put a conservative in as a judge doesn't mean they're required to agree with you 100% of the time, because they are judges. They have a job to do. They are judged by the job that they do to some degree. Like, they're not just going to go along with it. And it's this idea that they were going to create this like right-wing utopia where we're like, and it's like, no, like, you're getting exactly what you wanted. Abortion is a states' rights issue now. It is up to the states. You got exactly what you wanted, and now you're just realizing that fewer states agree with you than do.
Right.
Shocker.
Right. And beyond that, you don't get to violate the law because you're Donald Trump. And that's really what the current mess is about. Is there's anger over Trump's now third indictment. And because when I start to argue with there's some things that I agree with conservatives about in this space, and they're like, and specifically in the space of public school education and school choice, and I'm like, well, look, I said I vote for Democrats primarily because I primarily agree with what Democrats are pushing. Are there things that Democrats push that I don't like? Absolutely. And I'm going to work from within, so to speak, to try to get that managed. And to be fair, it's actually working in California. The odd thing in California is you have factions within the Democratic Party now that are arguing over how certain things should be done. And that's what it looks like in a single party state is people within that party will fracture into their groups and start making arguments. And by the way, start voting people out. As an example, in San Francisco, that's how you saw Chesa Boudin, who is a very progressive leftist DA, get voted out by less progressive centrist Democrats. Which is how it works. It's still going to work. Republicans are just mad because they're not even in the game at that point, right? But it's California, so, what do they call it? Commifornia or, whatever bullshit, stupid name. But the national divorce thing is ridiculous also because it would weaken the United States.
Absolutely.
And I think it's such a ridiculous conversation.
Like, what does that look like around the world? to like our to like not only our allies, but like all of our, quote unquote enemies. I won't use the word enemies, but like, what does that look like if we have a
adversaries,
fraction? What happens if we fracture and we become two countries? The United States is now like, how does that look? That looks so pitiful on a global scale to so many different people. I think it certainly weakens us, not only militarily, but like there's like 1,000 reasons why this is such a bullshit idea, and the least of which you touched on earlier. It is about the most unpatriotic thing someone can recommend. Basically, you're saying is like, this whole democracy thing, it's run its course. So let's split the country. And it's like, are you an idiot? Like, I get it that there are a lot of people out there who have it really rough right now. Comparatively, I would say to some of those people, not all, because I can't begin to understand what a lot of folks go through. But for some people who are out there bitching, who I know are out there bitching, I'm like, how bad do you have it, motherfucker? Like, literally tell me why everything is so rotten for you because the president disagrees with you on something. Like, grow
Right.
up, you fucking baby. Like,
Right.
grow up.
And it's part of the you know, the social justice wars as well, the whole anti-woke thing, the whole pro, you know, all of that mess too. Look, some of those conversations make me really angry as well, but the game then is to speak up and make your voice heard, right? Look, honestly, part of the reason why I jumped at doing this podcast with you is I would have a place to at least put my voice out there on a weekly basis where, you know, a few hundred people listen and we can move on with our week, right? And that's kind of like this is what I do now to put my voice out there is this. And there are things available for you, desirer of national divorce, person that wants national divorce, for you to do. By the way, if your ideas are so on point, you should be able to communicate them to another person such that that person can see that you're actually correct and they can change their opinion accordingly. It doesn't need to be done with force. You don't need to force the issue by dividing the country into two. We got what we wanted. What are you? And you know, and by the way, whenever you take one of these national divorce pushers down the road, as an example, nation states, countries generally float and creep to the left.
Yeah.
As time goes on, they just do. There's no way to stop it. I've confronted some of the national divorce, advocates in my life, and you know what they say? They say, "Well, we'll put it in the." One of them said, at least, "We'll put it in the Constitution that you can't." So they're just like they slowly are creating more and more of a non-liberal, and by liberal, I'm not talking about American liberal. I mean the concept of anti or non-authoritarian. They start to turn into a more and more authoritarian conversation about how it's a dictated state. Like there's a Bible. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Constitution in the new red country would be like the Bible that is unchangeable. And it's like, okay, man, that's not how reality works.
No.
It's just not. And it's not a new idea that's not how reality works, right? Like one of the, Jefferson has his whole writing that's on the wall in God, is it in the National Monument where he talks about laws have to change with time, right? Like what is it that people, I don't know. I am continuously shocked by those that don't want to allow norms to change at all and those that want norms to change in 5 minutes. Both of you are stupid. Shut up. Stop talking. Norms are something that we all get to participate in, that we all have a sort of a ersatz vote in as individuals. And stop trying to be crazy. You have to go out there and leave others touched, moved, and inspired that what your point of view is how it should be done. And you got to do it sometimes one person at a time. It isn't something, and see, that's the other thing. I think that the national divorce is yet another symptom of the immediacy of need in social media. You know, we just want to fix it now, you know, like that shit. And again, when I see it on the right, again, it's national divorce.
Well, and my question for them would be, my question for those folks would be, what's one thing that you've got fixed like that?
Right?
Well, racism is gone. Sexual harassment is gone. It's all gone because you decided you needed it fixed like that.
Meanwhile, it's not, right? And that's like, and by the way, I think you're nailing it. You know what happens is, it becomes sort of this like agreed upon, like what's what I'm looking for? Like you just it just disappears. You know, it's like an agreed upon fantasy. You know what I mean?
We've as a society over the last few decades, we have lost the ability to effectively fight for change. I would say. I think, and this is not like, I'm thinking back to recent movements like the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm thinking to Time's Up. I'm thinking about all of these recent movements. And I'm not saying that there's anything bad about those, but what I will say is like, what happened is exactly what me and a lot of other people thought would happen, which is like, It's on fire for a little while, and then people just stop giving a shit.
Well, I mean,
Because
but why?
everybody,
But why do people stop giving a
well,
shit?
for multiple reasons. Because they have the pandemic is over, because they have jobs that they have to deal with, they have families that they have to deal with. So thinking of movements like Black Lives Matter, about Time's Up, like people just, it was on fire for a while, and honestly, in a couple of cases, longer than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But then people just stopped giving a shit, or maybe they
Yeah,
didn't stop giving a shit.
but why did
they
they stop giving a shit? There's a
well,
reason there. It's not just that
because
they had
life,
short attention spans.
a lot of it is life happens, right? Like
Yeah.
people can't live their lives on a picketing line. They have
Right.
jobs, they have families, they have to make a living, and the pandemic made it very easy for a lot of people to get together because we didn't have shit to do collectively. Like we were all
Right.
just sitting around twiddling our thumbs, and so it was like, oh, I've got all this extra time. I can actually lend my voice to this conversation. I can actually show up and protest, and then once their lives came back, shocker, and I'm not saying this is a judgment, like this is the way life works, right? Like it just stopped being as big of a deal. And so like all of this,
yes, but things also got a little complicated for people. People like the black and white reality. Look, when a movement first hits, it's real easy to be black and white about it, right? But as time went on, that black and white reality became less and less sustainable. As an example, you said BLM. The problem, for example, BLM and Patrice Cullors, BLM National is missing millions of dollars now.
Yeah.
And that's an example of how some things fall apart. Or when you look at, everybody thought, what's his name? The kid that shot those 3 protesters.
Rittenhouse, Kyle Rittenhouse.
People were sure Rittenhouse was going down. But when you looked at the law and you looked at the actual circumstances by which he shot people, it turns out it was self-defense. And he got off. And look, I assert that guy went there to shoot someone, and other people do that. But guess what? The people that he shot also went there to hurt and kill people. And that's also another problem with where a lot of these movements go. And this, by the way, fits the national divorce thing. If you think that this would happen without significant violence that would endanger all of our families, all of our lives, all of our abilities to work and enjoy ourselves, who wants to trade what we got right now for a revolutionary war? And this applies not just to the national divorce morons, but this applies to anybody calling for revolution. It's just like, okay, you really don't want that.
Yeah.
How about this? Women don't want that. I'm going to say it. Women don't want that. Children don't want that.
Yeah.
Non-dominant races don't want that. Okay? Because what's going to happen is it's going to give a path for us to go to those people being abused. In war, women get raped more, children get raped more. Everybody gets killed more. Racism flares up, right? You're town racist in the middle of a revolution. They're going to take a hit. They're going to take a chance to take a hit at those races that they don't like. It only gets terrible. It never gets nicer. And I don't know. I think that people are out of their minds. I think that people.
Well, also, let's be clear. If you're a minority and you're thinking about this from that perspective, white people still make up 60% of the population of this country. Hispanics are 18%, blacks are 12%. You're not going to be in favor of this.
Right. Yeah, you're not in favor of this. And you don't want to be in favor of this. It's ridiculous. And so I don't know. I think that I resolve these conversations with my friends by saying, well, let's see what happens. And I've had a couple of people now tell me that they're sure it's going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years. Fine. I'll see you in 5 to 10 years. And I have one that's he thinks it's going to be something that will kick off if Trump isn't voted in. And okay, well, let's see how that goes. I don't think that. But
I don't think that either. And I don't think that because the people who support Trump, and I'm just going to say this, are for the most part cowards. They're for the most part cowards.
No, maybe not cowards.
No, I'm using the word cowards because
really
I don't think they're committed enough to it. I think if they tried to overthrow something again, the moment the tanks roll out, the moment the National Guard is there, their asses are going to back the fuck down.
Well, right, and I think that you saw the creme de la creme of who was willing to take the streets
Yeah.
on January 6th. And
Yeah.
let's be clear, that ended real quick when what? When what was her name? That lady that got shot. When she got shot, and the news of that started
Yeah.
radiating outwards,
Yeah.
people were like, oh, this could be crazy. Yeah. Like imagine if the American military and the police forces in the Capitol actually had to start, like Kent State style
Yeah.
shooting people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would have been a mess.
Yeah.
And so maybe don't ask for that
Yeah.
because you don't want that.
I don't think people realize how close that could have come to happening on January 6th.
Yeah.
Like, it was, I mean, and that's the last thing anybody wants is fucking National Guards, members out in the streets picking people off. Like,
Right.
nobody wants that. But I'm going to say, if your dumbass is dumb enough to like try to fucking overthrow the government because Trump doesn't win again and you're willing to go to those lengths, you need to accept the shit that's going to come down on you.
Which is going to be terrible.
Which is going to be terrible.
And it's funny, you say cowards. I don't know if it's cowards. It is. How about this? They're just not prepared. And what I mean by that is they're either too old or infirm or overweight or under they don't have what they would need to have to actually do a revolution. They may have guns, but they don't have enough ammo. Maybe they have enough guns and ammo, but they're not mentally clean enough to be able to take those guns and ammo and get out there and actually lead a movement. They're not leaders. Here's a joke. The people that would be there to fight for January 6th, if they were enough of a leader to get people to show up for that, they'd be enough of a leader to get people to vote for Trump.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be right back. So listen to a few words from our sponsor, and we'll see you in a few. We are back with Center Clueless. We've talked about a lot of nonsense, but there's no bigger pile of nonsense than number 45. And that would be Donald John Trump, our former president of the United States, who is now for the third time, repeat it, third time.
Third indictment.
Been indicted. And this indictment seems a little different than the other two.
Well, okay, so hold on. In the space of indictment hierarchy, okay, what's the least likely to do any damage to him right now? I say is the New York case.
Agreed.
I still kind of put this under Mar-a-Lago, although maybe I'm wrong about it because there seems to be a lot of mens rea stuff, meaning they're going to have to prove his mental state. And in fact, Trump's current lawyers have already sort of floated that's what they're going to say. They're going to say that he had legal advice that what he was doing was appropriate from like Eastman and those other idiots, the unindicted co-conspirators.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that Mar-a-Lago is more dangerous to him than this. And I think that the upcoming Georgia vote tampering case is probably the most dangerous for him actually getting. But what do you think? Do you think that's accurate?
I think that's pretty accurate. I do think the Georgia one is going to be could potentially be the most damning. I put this in the Mar-a-Lago case kind of at about the same spot.
Right,
I do agree
right.
that I don't even know that they should have brought charges, frankly, for the New York City thing. I don't know. We'll see. But but it is, I mean, at a certain point, you have to just quit it with the whole, everybody's out to get Trump. It's all a conspiracy. At a certain point, when you've now been indicted 3 times with at least one, maybe 2 more indictments to come, your brain needs to kick in at some point and say, maybe this isn't all bullshit.
Well, what's interesting is I listened to Lawfare's breakdown of this, and because I'd heard a lot of people talk about it, but Lawfare, which is the Brookings Institute, which is a pretty, if not one of the best legal think tanks in D.C., and they broke it down in a way that, so the way Jack Smith has charged this is normally they would try to focus in on a limited number of assertions so that they could have a clear case to argue in court. But because of mens rea, they're actually charging the whole kit and caboodle. And they got the entire, and Jack Smith apparently is known for being super smart, right?
Yeah.
And isn't Jack Smith a Republican too, which makes it even funnier?
I think that's true. He definitely has gone after, I know he's gone after some Democrats. I just don't know. He was appointed, let's see, in November. I can't really find out what his political leaning is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's a Republican, but I realized I hadn't vetted that. Oh, he's not registered with any political party, according to Reuters 3 days ago.
He is not. Okay, well, then that kind of makes him the perfect person, but he also was a chief prosecutor at The Hague, so we know he's got some.
Yeah.
So but that's right? That's kind of who you want in this role.
I mean, he's still a bit of a conservative, though, like in the way that he comports himself and the way that he behaves, although maybe he's not a card-carrying Republican. That being said, let's be clear, Trump is in trouble with this guy.
Yeah.
Trump is in trouble with this guy after listening to the discussion. Again, I can't properly, give you what they say at the Brookings Institute about it. Go listen to their podcast. It's 2 hours of podcasting, at least from them on this already. It's shocking to me. It's somewhat shockingly bad for Trump in that I didn't even think they were going to be able to hit him on this. But now that you see what was said to him, right? And you also see, and a point they made is Pence didn't talk to the congressional investigators, but he talked to them. Meadows didn't talk, right? But he talked to them. There were a lot of people in Trump's administration that refused to talk to the democratically led House committee, but absolutely. And then, by the way, as an example, Pence came out swinging when some of the things he has said came out this week, and he did not back down. He's like, go read the Constitution. He's like, go read the Constitution. Like he just, which by the way, shockingly, just gloves off about this. I suspect you have a lot of people who said a lot of things in that grand jury that Trump's not going to be able to get away from. Here's the thing. If Trump doesn't get voted in 2024, he's absolutely in for a ride for the next 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
He's done. I mean, he's already in for a ride, but man, think about it.
Done. Let's be clear. If he does not get regardless of how it happens, if he does not get elected president in 2024, his political career is over.
Right.
Over. Totally over.
Right.
And then all he's doing at that point is fighting for his freedom.
Right. And then what's kind of sad for me is a lot of people are going to vote for Biden just because he's not Trump. And that's sad for me because I'd rather people be excited about Biden. I still think there are things to be excited about, about Biden. It's become such a much. Really, the problem with Biden right now is as we discussed last week, is his loyalty to his family, and that's being properly weaponized. And I say properly, meaning it ain't a bad weaponization. It's being weaponized by many on the right and many on the far left to attack Biden, and it's working. And in this case, it should be fair. How about this? If there was a viable Republican candidate on the right, I assert Biden would be distancing himself from his brother and from his ridiculous idiot son right now. But because his likely competitor is a guy that's now been indicted 3 times, 4 times by the time it's time to vote, that Georgia, it's coming down.
Oh, yeah.
And it's probably going to be airtight.
Yeah.
You got a guy that's DOA, but leaves us with the shocking and maybe, possibly titillating reality that he's going to govern from prison.
Well, also, and let's keep, because we're going to find out sooner rather than later whether or not Trump actually shows up to this debate or not. A lot of people think he will. A lot of people think he won't. I will say, if he does show up,
he's toast. He's toast if he shows up.
He has nothing. You have nothing. What does he have? He has a history of making promises that he didn't keep.
Right.
He has all of these indictments hanging over his head. Like he's got there's
He's
so
got a
much
history. He's got a history of disloyalty where people that
Yeah.
he
Oh
handpicked,
yeah.
he now shits on, and you can fuck yourself for that
Like
disloyalty.
how do you make a case for yourself when you've got a stage full of people? And maybe that's the reason why he's not going to show up to the debate.
Right.
Because if you've got a stage full of people, like you don't think Chris Christie is going to demolish him in a debate?
Yeah.
Like you've got you've got some sycophants like fucking Vivek Ramaswamy, who are like
Rama Flim Flam, yeah.
who are like still trying to like suck his dick at the same
Right.
time. But it's like,
Right.
it's going to be bad.
By the way, totally sad that Tim Scott got down on his knees.
I know.
And sucked his dick. Sorry about look, Tim Scott gave up a massive amount of credibility when he defended Trump on this January 6th.
Yes, I agree.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, it's like, it killed it for me. Like, I'm like, look, I mean, honestly, Tim, now that was a critical moment within which he could have said, he could have been neutral about it. I trust the American system. I want to see how this goes out. Yeah. I think that we should what he could have said is, I think that after the case is over, we should do an audit of how these decisions were made in the Justice Department. I'm down with that. I'm down with review and I'm down with auditing. But for you to it's weaponizing. No, it's not. It's not weaponizing.
I'll tell you what that's a lack of. It is a lack of courage. And it is like it's
well,
like,
he already took a hit, right? He'd already taken a political hit for going after DeSantis and DeSantis educational changes. And so maybe this was, I don't know. It's kind of sad because for me, I guess a center left guy, or even maybe just a center guy now, I don't know anymore. I was cautiously optimistic that we saw a courageous, civil Republican who I might have to vote for in certain instances if I was going to keep to my own word. Ultimately, watching him defend Trump, I was like, nope. Trump. How about this? Trump is the poison for me. If you're defending Trump, you've lost the script.
And that's why it's no shocker for folks who listen to this that I'm a Chris Christie fan. But I think he is the only candidate in the field who is actually consistently not anti-Trump to where he needs to be. And that's what I loved about that interview that he just did on Pod Save America.
I can't believe he did that, by the way.
Is because he's he makes his case about Trump, but also anytime they go at him about any conservative issues, he's no, he's a conservative. He's an actual conservative, the way that I think of conservatism and the way that a lot of people think of conservatism. So he's not going to go on a show like that, and you're not going to agree with him most of the time. Nobody listening to that show is going to agree with him on 90% of what he's talking about. But what they can agree with him on is Donald Trump. And
it's funny because you brought him up early on a few weeks ago, and I was like, yeah, whatever. But guess what? He's been the most consistent, and not just consistent about Trump. He's been the most consistent about all of his positions. And I just, that consistency is important. The fact that he's not gaming this, the fact that he doesn't have a war room. I'm not saying he doesn't have a war room, but in the war room, they're not saying alter your message to fit X. He's not doing any of that. And to be fair, that's commendable in the modern day as well as maybe any other day of politics.
And that's also that's always been how he's won, right? He's won every time he's been elected just for being himself. That's what has. Now, a lot of people don't like Chris Christie as himself. He is, polarizing to a lot of people.
Yeah, he's odious.
I mean, he is somebody, all people think about when they think of Chris Christie is him yelling at a fucking teacher at a union meeting. And they think about all these things.
Right.
But it's he does, he does shoot straight. He does tell you the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. He doesn't change his opinions for the most part. There are certainly examples I think he's doing a decent job of explaining why he was a Trump sycophant for so long. I don't know that I or most people buy 100% of it, but I buy enough of it where I'm okay, I'll allow people to change. And and switch their views. And the fact that he is so diametrically opposed to, Trump's actions, not to Trump. Let's keep in mind, like, Christie still says that he agrees with a lot of things that Trump did in office.
Right.
He thinks policy-wise, Trump was pretty good. So, like, it's not like he's totally anti-Trump. He just thinks that everything Trump did after election night was horrible.
Who do you think he votes for if it's Trump, Biden?
I think he doesn't vote.
Right. You think he just abstains? Right?
I think he doesn't vote because he's already said he will not vote for Donald Trump. He has come out and said, "I will not vote for him as president."
I didn't hear that. So, okay,
great. He's already come out and said that. So, whether or not that means he votes for Joe Biden, I would highly doubt it. I would think that you would see Chris Christie just not voting.
Yeah.
And
okay.
But look, he's obviously still got a lot of ground to make up. He's been steadily rising, but he needs like a boost. I think the debates could give him that boost that he needs.
Right. What are the debates?
The first debates are soon. The one thing that does not help him, which first Republican debate is August 23rd.
Okay.
The thing that doesn't help him is he's been saying everywhere that he knows for a fact Donald Trump is going to show up. Every time you hear him, he's like, "Oh, Trump's going to show up. I guarantee it." Trump might not show up.
You sure?
Oh, I'm not sure. He might not.
So you think Trump can resist the ego boost to getting up there and beating? Because look, Trump did get on stage at early Republican debates and just ravage people.
He did, but here's the difference.
He can do that again?
But would he rather do that, or would he rather one-up Chris Christie? Chris Christie, literally, his whole talking point on every interview he does has been, Trump is showing up to these debates. There's no way he can contain himself. He's not going to let us be up there without him. And I'm like, I don't know what gives Trump a bigger internal like boost. Is it like showing up and like potentially getting wrecked, or is it being like, "Fuck you, Chris Christie. I ain't got to show up for your bullshit." Like,
yeah, I think Trump
you're beneath me. Like, you're beneath me.
Right.
I don't need to debate you. Like, I don't know necessarily which is the better move for Trump.
Yeah, but Trump is having difficulty keeping quiet, even about he's not even able to. So it may be that's what Christie's gauging, is that his
I'm sure it
seemingly worse ability now than he had 3 years ago of shutting up when he needs to shut up.
I personally think it's 50-50. I think it's not going to be something that we learn about until like 3 days before the debate. That's when he'll probably make an announcement of some sort. But I think it's just as likely that he skips, because I think he and his team probably see the danger of him going to that debate with all of the people who are going to be on stage. Like, what happens if, because Trump, what happens if Trump starts running his mouth about Mike Pence not overturning the election? And like, then you've got like Mike Pence, Chris Christie, all these other people like slamming him.
It's over.
And like, and Trump has a hard time controlling shit like that. So it's like, I almost feel like it's irresponsible of them to allow him to debate.
No, but see, that's the thing, is he's notorious for not listening to those people. See, here's what Christie's got on both you and I. He worked with the dude, right? So he knows.
Yeah.
He's seen this, which, could you imagine how bad the sausage making is in the Trump world? Like, he's seen the sausage, and he may know something that we don't. I hope. Here's the thing. If Trump shows up, that's going to be magnificent. It's going to be marvelous, because not only will I be able to tease the conservatives I know if Trump shows up, which I will.
Yeah.
He's going to say stupid things. It's going to be ridiculous, right? I mean, one of the greatest things about the Congress going after Hunter Biden was when the dude finally testified. He testified that he didn't think Biden knew that there was chicanery going on these calls, basically letting all the hot air out of the Republican attack on Biden. You're going to see 15 moments like that. If Trump goes into, you're going to see him talk shit, and you're going to have, like you said, his vice president there, a guy that worked for him. They're all going to be there. They're all going to have insider knowledge, and they're going to be able to relate that insider knowledge with conviction on their faith. The one thing about
don't forget Nikki Haley either, who also worked with him.
Right. But Pence, I, in my life, have Who could make Pence look like a baller? And when he was dealing with those hecklers, I was like, where was this asshole? Where's this guy who's now he shows up and he's talking shit?
Yeah.
Read the
Yeah.
Constitution. Anyways, but you saw the look on his face.
Yeah.
It was righteous. And not just he wasn't so Pence suffers from a problem where he can't lie well. Pence doesn't lie well.
Yeah.
So when he's bullshitting and like especially when like his wife is there and she's got to put the good it looks awkward. It looks uncomfortable. It looks like they got a bowling ball up their
Well,
ass.
yeah, because Mike Pence, regardless of what you think about his policies, he doesn't enjoy lying.
No, he's Mr. Goody Two Shoes.
Yeah, and
it's the worst thing ever.
He doesn't enjoy it. And the thing about Pence is, and I don't like giving someone credit for something that I think any rational person would do, but it does need to be said to his credit, amidst all of the bullshit of January 6th, amidst everything that was going on, people screaming, hang Mike Pence, Trump, what he was doing, all of this shit, he could have tried to do some bullshit. He could have tried to
not
pull
only
some
did
bullshit.
he hold on, he was hiding in a fucking underground, underground parking lot.
But you know what?
With his people. Jesus.
He knew it was wrong. He knew it was unconstitutional, and he wasn't going to have any fucking part of it. And so I will always give him a monicum of respect for just knowing, like, this is wrong, this is unconstitutional, regardless of how I feel as a Republican, I cannot do this.
Yeah, I think that what you're seeing is a Mike. But what you're also seeing, I think, in many ways, and this is why it would be great if Trump would show up, an emboldened Mike Pence, who now has faced the demon and survived, and he's turned it into some sort of God was with me shit in his head. So now he's going to roll into that, knowing God's with him, and he's going to talk like God's with him. Yeah. He's going to behave like God is with them. And so you're going to have this holy warrior, this paladin of honesty up there, and it's going to be hilarious.
But let's be clear, that's a danger. And I know a lot of people have written off Mike Pence for a while now, and I don't necessarily think he's got a good chance either. But I will say, he is a good speaker. Yep. He is always good on the debate stage. He does command this authority on the debate stage. And like, that might work on some people, like hearing the former vice president with that confidence, with that like extra charge behind him. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not willing to write. I'm not willing to write him off. I'm not willing to totally write him off yet. I think I will be willing to after the first debate, possibly. But like, I'm not willing to write him off yet. I still think the three people have the most to gain on the debate stage are Christie, Pence, and Ramaswamy. Not because of his policies.
Ramaswamy, really?
Yeah, not because of his policies, but because he is a good speaker. He is a great debater. And, now that I know that you're
attracted to Ramaswamy,
there are a lot of people out there.
I'm doing with you what I do with my friends who are attracted to certain women who they then give them. I'm starting to do the same thing with you. I'm like, oh, yeah, because you want to sleep with them. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I don't want to sleep with him. I want to fuck him. It's a difference.
Okay. My point is, do you really think Ramaswamy still got juice to be able to swing a bat like that?
I do, to some degree.
Discredited himself?
Oh, no. I'm not with the base that he's appealing to. Like, he's appealing to Trump's base. That's who he's after. He's after Trump's base, but he's like, I'm not Trump.
Yeah, they're willing to forgive a lot, too.
Yeah, and so, like, no, and I think he's got a chance. I think he's got a chance on that stage, depending on how cuckoo butter he goes on his policies. But, like, he's got a chance to make an impact. I don't think he's got a shot. I don't. I did at one point early on. I don't anymore. I think he's not got a great shot, but I think he's one of three candidates that has the most to gain from that debate. And I think, and frankly, I don't know what Trump has to gain from it. I think the best he could hope for is to just barely skate by. But I just don't see that happening. Like
I'm holding out hope that Tim Scott shows up and redeems himself, but I don't know.
Well, we'll see.
You don't sound convinced. That's funny.
I'm not convinced, but what I am convinced about is it's the end of the show.
Right on.
We did it. We made it through another one. Number 14.
Look at that.
Number 14. We will be back next week with more news. We've also we do have confirmed that we will be joined by Kathy Baldock at some point very soon.
She give you a date yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
Dealing with some family issues, but my guess is going to be in September. That seems to be what it's looking like.
All right.
And we'll be talking all about.
I'm absolutely, as you and I have discussed offline, I've been looking stuff up, and that's going to be, I think, an interesting show.
It's a divisive topic. It's going to be really fun to dive into it with Kathy, and then maybe we'll try to get someone from the other side of that debate on,
right?
And get them on as well. That would be a lot of fun. So we're getting both sides, but that'll be coming up in September. And otherwise, Center Clueless podcast is produced by Ryan Verrill. Hi, Ryan. Please visit us at centerclueless.com for more information, or find us on the socials at Center Clueless. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and tell your friends to tune in, pretty please. And if you have a question, comment, or criticism, you can email us at centerclueless@gmail.com. Look how I just rambled through all that shit.
That's so good. You're like a pro at this.
So quickly. Until next time, whether you're left, right, or somewhere in the center, we hope you're a little less clueless, just like us.